everyone, and welcome to today's DataVox webinar, Workplace Health During COVID-19, presented by Density. My name is Jessica, and I will be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this webinar through Cisco WebEx events, and the audio can be heard through your PC or by calling into the phone number listed with the access code provided in your confirmation email or calendar invite for this event. Today's webinar is being recorded on behalf of DataVox, and participation in this event indicates your consent to being included in that recording. All attendees will receive an email with a link to the completed recording 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you have questions for the presenters at any time during this presentation, you may submit those questions via the Q&A feature to the bottom right of your screen. This should already be turned on. Simply click Q&A and the text box will appear. Our panel will be responding to these questions throughout the presentation via text and verbally at the conclusion of the presentation. If you are in need of support or have a question not pertaining to today's topic, please utilize the chat feature and I will be happy to assist you. This feature is separate from the Q&A feature and can be turned on by clicking the chat bubble in the lower center of your screen. Now that we have reviewed the features of this webinar, we would like to start off today's presentation with a few words from our VP of Building Technology Solutions, Mike Betchek. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jessica, and good morning, everybody. I'm glad everybody could join the call this morning. I wanted to make a quick introduction. We're excited to have Density as part of this webinar this morning, and Jeff and Megan are joining us from Density. Welcome, guys. I know our clients have started to talk about return to work strategies and potentially new workspace protocols that they may consider. And for all of our customers, the conversation has been around the health and safety of their employees as they return to work. And I know, Jeff, you have a great solution that people are considering and implementing. And even before this unprecedented time, your solution was being implemented by large and small companies of all sizes throughout the country. So I know occupancy limits and density is top of mind. Social distancing is not going away. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you have an agenda today that you're going to review with the team and then also go into a demo. And at the end, we'll have some questions from everybody. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike.
You bet.
Yeah, so just in terms of an introduction, my name is Jeff. I look after some portion of sales in the West for Density. Density is a people counting technology and platform. We're the most accurate and real-time and anonymous way to count the number of people in any building, floor, or room. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how the system works. And I'm also going to talk specifically around a lot of the deployments in terms of workplace health during this pandemic that we're in right now. So let me just share my screen here. Pull this up. So this is like old news, but I did want to start off with this. This was sometime in March. Somebody that came up with this concept of the hammer and the dance. It's been used pretty widely throughout the media. But the concept is that during this pandemic, there's a period of an outbreak and policies that have been put in place to try to, reduce the infection rate of the disease. And then after that period of time, these restrictions may loosen up a little bit, but the reality of it is we're really going to be in this dance with COVID-19 for some time to come, and that's going to look like a lot of changes. And these changes are going to be regional. They're going to vary from company, from location, and there's going to be outbreaks. And there's going to be periods where there aren't. And the real question right now that all of us are really confronting is, how, given all of this uncertainty, how are we going to bring people back? And what's that actually going to look like? And that's really, I think, one of the most difficult business questions we've confronted probably in our lifetimes. With Density, we really think that during all of this volatility, really data can be your superpower. And density as foundational data for the number of people in any building, floor, and room really can help inform decisions not just for you and your team, but also for your employees or for the visitors and guests that might be coming to restaurants. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how data can really be a foundation to help you manage these uncertain times. So let's talk a little bit about the data-driven recovery. So during this time, we've been having a lot of conversations with our customers and then also with our prospects. There's been a lot of uptick in interest in people counting. And really, as we kind of categorize these conversations, there's sort of 4 different themes that have emerged in terms of the ways that people are talking about the return to work. One topic that comes up all the time is credible communication. I think we've seen examples of where less than credible communication can cause more harm and distrust than is good. And really very clear, credible communication and a communication of a plan is extremely important, especially if you're in retail or if you are restaurants, you want to make sure that not only are the doors open, but people actually feel comfortable coming into those doors. Or if you're managing the return of the workforce, not only are you opening your doors for the workforce, but they know that coming to your workplace is going to be a health sanctuary, a place that you can actually trust and are eager to come back to. Credible communication is a big piece of this. We think that data is a very important piece of credible communication. So you can use things like metrics around changes in the density of your buildings in terms of how many square feet you're allowing per employee, and then actual real-time communications of how you're performing against that. Or even things as simple as communicating how long the line might be to get into the building. To your employees before they actually arrive, so they know if they should come later or not. The other theme that comes up quite a bit is obviously workplace distancing. And I'll get into this a little bit as well, but obviously a data-driven approach in terms of workplace distancing is going to be vital. The other theme that comes up is deep cleaning and sanitation. And I'll also even throw on top of this things like HVAC, ways that you can maintain a healthy environment in the workplace. Everyone's talking about deep cleaning. The reality is, if you're managing tens of thousands of square feet of real estate or millions of square feet of real estate, you can't deep clean everything. There just literally aren't enough people to do it and not enough supplies. So rather than these time-based schedules that we've been used to with deep cleaning, we see people very interested in usage-based schedules. So places that are used 10 times as frequently should be cleaned 10 times as often. And that's, again, where density can provide that kind of information so that you can be more strategic about how you're cleaning your facilities. And then the 4th point is really monitoring and responding with data. So in terms of a data-driven approach, having the information available at your team's fingertips to help inform your COVID response is critical. And we think that occupancy data, the people count, can be really fundamental for that. So let's just talk a little bit about the workplace distancing, because obviously this one comes up quite a bit. One thing that we talk with a lot of people about is standards around square footage per person. So we see a lot of large retailers, for example, establishing new standards around how many square feet they're going to allow per guest. We've seen the same thing happen with corporate offices where, we had this standard before, and now we are expanding it 10x to make sure that we have, let's say 3,500 square feet per person available. So what you see right here is a rough mock-up of a density dashboard. And we'll look at the dashboard a little bit later. But what I wanted to show you is what would be possible within density as sort of a before and after. The blue line is literally the density of a specific building over 2 days. And you can see the typical curve where in the morning, nobody's in the building, and then you have your workforce arriving and, arriving at some sort of peak in terms of the density of square feet per person. You see a dip during lunch when people might be leaving the office, and then they return and then leaving in the afternoon. One thing that we're hearing from a lot of employers is this strategy of trying to temporally distance their employees. So breaking employees out into different groups of people that might be arriving at the office at different times of the day. Or if like my elementary school for my daughter right now, they're talking about dividing teams into specific days when they would arrive. So these types of strategies we hear about all the time. They're in this hammer and the dance scenario. These policies are going to be changing. You are going to implement these policies, and then you want to be able to monitor and respond how your spaces are performing. So the red line is basically what you would see. Here's where you see 3 different teams arriving at different times, and you'd be able to see, is this achieving my goal of trying to keep the density below 3,500 square feet per person for my facility? So that's one example. One thing just to know about offices is that it's easy to go to the square feet per employee for social distancing, but if you start to think about it, the challenge oftentimes really is at the entryways. So this comes up all the time in conversations that I have where they said, hey, we're going to put in a socially distancing policy around 1 person per elevator. And so when you look at this, like let's say you look at a large building with 6 elevators, like a skyscraper, and you're allowing only 1 person per elevator, and let's say each elevator takes 60 seconds to go up and down and pick up another person, and you want 1,000 people to get into the office, that's literally going to take you 2 hours and 46 minutes to do. So it's not hard to start imagining how these entrances to the buildings and these choke points could actually be the most problematic things and the most important things to think about in terms of the return to work. They also are, by the way, the first experience that the employees are going to have returning to work. So you can think about if you're interested in communicating how safe the workplace is, this is going to be a very important and critical place to make sure that you think about beforehand to manage that situation so employees feel safe coming back to work. Here's another way of looking at the data. Once you have density data by entryways, you can also start to figure out which of your entryways are the most problematic. So, sometimes some of the things that we've heard are we've heard the 6 feet per person, obviously for social distancing. Through doorways, maybe there's sort of a policy of 2 seconds between people. Here's a dashboard where you'd actually be able to compare entryways and see which entryways are the most problematic in terms of the rate of entry. And so you could figure out about different ways to have traffic flow or think about policies that you could put in place at specific entryways that are having really acute problems. So that's just an introduction. I wanted to start with sort of 90,000 feet, and now we can drill in a little bit more into how density actually works. This is the density sensor. It's a people counting sensor. As I said, it's the most accurate way of counting people in a physical space that's available in the market. It's 100% anonymous. There's no camera involved, so you don't need to be worried about, our employees don't need to be worried about, personally identifiable information being captured. You don't need to be worried about intellectual property being potentially captured by this device. It's 100% anonymous. And the data is also available real time, and I'll show you some real-time applications of the data. This is the sensor deployed above a typical door. You can see it sort of right above the door there. It's just, in this case, it's mounted to the wall. There's a whole variety of mounting options, from adhesive to glass to drop rod hanging from the ceiling. We work with any sort of single and double wide doors, and for wider entries, you can deploy multiple units. The device basically uses a scanning infrared laser. We capture something like 30 frames per second, and I'm going to show you what the raw images from that look like. But the data is in 3 dimensions, so that means that the onboard artificial intelligence has a lot to work with in terms of doing a very good job of recognizing people and knowing which direction they're moving, either in or out, and not counting anything that's not a person. This is what the raw data looks like. So on the left, what you see is the raw data, and this isn't thermal data. What you see is 3-dimensional data. So the yellow is close up to you, and the blue is far away. And again, that depth data gives the device a lot of information that it can use to accurately recognize people. So on the right, what you see is what the algorithm sees. It cuts out anything that's not a person, bicycles, backpacks, pets, anything else, and then basically accurately counts people as they're coming in and out through the threshold. And this works in all kinds of circumstances. You could have 10 people walking through the door at once, 2 in one direction, 8 in another, and density is going to know 2 people just entered and 8 people just left. Let me show you some ways that the data is used. Now, when we're thinking about density data, it's helpful to split it into kind of two categories. There's the real-time data, the things that you can do by knowing the occupancy of a space right now. And then there's historical data, which is all of the data that you collect over time so you can see how a space is performing. Here's an example of one way to use density live data. So this is a digital display that is for queue management. So this is just a web app. In fact, we include with any density plan a web app that displays live density data. This is just a rendering, but it's been customized to do a particular thing. And in this case, what it's doing is telling people when they need to enter the space and when they need to stop and wait. So rather than having somebody at the door with a clicker managing a crowd, you could literally have a digital display that's showing that to you. It's also a great opportunity. We heard about some of the new policies in Texas around 25% occupancy. And then also some of the standards that are being put in Texas in terms of the requirements at restaurants. This would be a great opportunity for a restaurant, for example, to say exactly, we are only using disposable menus, and these are the other things that we're doing to ensure your safety. And by the way, we're at 20% occupancy, so please come in. This is the density dashboard. So this is all of the historical data, and we'll get into this a little bit more later. But this is really where you can see how your spaces are performing as you're adjusting policies and optimize your portfolio. We also have a mobile app. So all of the data that's available in the dashboard, you can also pull up on your mobile device and see that in real time and do things like create alerts so that you know when a space hits a certain threshold, you can get alerted through your mobile app. It's also important to know that Density has a very robust API or application programming interface. What that means is that a lot of our customers build applications on top of our data. So Facebook, for example, has their Facebook Eats app, and so that employees can see exactly which cafeteria they should go to. In the era of COVID-19, if you're managing multiple cafeterias and you have some sort of employee experience app, you could tell employees which one they should go to that has space in terms of occupancy. Those would be some ways that you could leverage the Density API. So that's it for a high-level overview. I was going to jump into showing you a little bit of the dashboard here. But before I do that, I wonder, Mike, if this is a good time to pause for a couple of questions.
I think we'll save the questions for the end, Jeff. And then I think it's best that you just show the demo and then we'll circle back with some of these questions. Okay, great. Sounds good. So let me just show you then the density dashboard. What you see here, we're going to start out with spaces. And so it's important to know that density, while we're just doing a count of the people coming through a threshold, the really interesting thing about density is that on this platform, we can define spaces. So these 4 entries comprise this space. So if I click on this Albuquerque headquarters, this entire building may have 5 entrances, and density is taking all of the information from those sensors, and we're doing an accurate count of the number of people in the Albuquerque headquarters. So let's just look at the Albuquerque headquarters for now. There's a bunch of metadata about the headquarters in terms of the target capacity, which is, and there's a legal capacity. We also know the area in terms of square feet of the place, and you can also define things like how much you're spending in terms of your lease on the space. For this date range right here, April 12th through April 18th, I can see the number of entrances. So this is the number of people coming into the space on any given day. I can also see when those busy periods happen. So it looks like 8 a.m. is when we have peak in terms of visits into the space. So this might be helpful for trying to think about where you might have guards deployed or procedures and policies you might have in place in terms of social distancing at doors. You'd know your busy times. Entrances are interesting. For corporate real estate, the really interesting stuff happens with occupancy. So this is how many people are actually in the Albuquerque headquarters. In this case, we're just looking at the maximum number of people each day. And here is an hour by hour, day by day look at that same information. Now, just to show you that these data are live, over here on the right, you can actually see in the Albuquerque headquarters, this is literally the number of people that are in that building right now. So 799, or just went up to 800,
It's 80% full. And these dots that you see moving across the screen, these are literally entrances and exits into the space happening at any of the doors in real time. Right here, you can see the curve of this space today as it's basically been increasing right up to right now. So this is the spaces view of density. I want to take us to dashboards next. Once you install density, you're going to find a lot of different teams that are interested in the data. So HR is going to want to have one cut of the data. The security team is going to be interested in something else. You know, somebody who's managing your broader real estate portfolio might want to see several buildings in a dashboard. So these dashboards are a way of basically giving everybody their own personalized and regular view of the data. So you see right here, you can create as many as you want. What we do with onboarding with our customers is we create these based off of the use cases that they identify. And then you can always create more and they're editable. So let me just take you through this one, for example. Here we're looking at the Albuquerque headquarters summary, and I'm looking at the 4th floor, the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, and 1st floor, and then the overall building, and looking at how each of those floors is basically performing in square footage per employee. And that's, you know, that's based off of the square footage that we and you as the customer have put into the platform of how many square feet are available for each of these levels. You know, conference rooms, this is a common one too. Maybe you want to see conference room utilization. So this is working hours. You also define working hours in the platform. So this tells you that room 208 was basically occupied by somebody 86% of the time, which is really busy for a conference room. Room 204, only 66% of the time. So we have teams with many of our customers that they have entire dashboards just devoted to conference rooms to try to figure out how to optimize their conference room space. And now they're talking to us about, all right, what do we do now that we have to have the number of people that we allow into any one of these conference rooms? So we're working on dashboards and strategies for them to manage that. Anyway, these are all editable. You can create as many as you'd like. You can edit them. So if I wanted to go here and create a new report, we have a bunch of pre-canned ways of looking at the data. I could create these, add them to the dashboard. Once they're in the dashboard, you can set up these email digests so that it literally lands in the email inbox of whoever you'd like and whatever time frequency you'd like. So those are the dashboards. Moving on now to analytics. This is more of a place to do a little bit more ad hoc reporting and analysis, a place to sort of compare spaces. So I'll show you how this works a little bit. Here's some saved reports. I'm going to show you how you can save a report. But if I wanted to create a new report, I can do this. Let's say I wanted to look at that Albuquerque headquarters that I was looking at, and then also look at the North Market Street on the Dallas campus, and then this one on Pacific Avenue, and then even this building in New York City. What I'm looking at right now is I'm looking at the last week of data, looking at hourly data. So every hour, I can get down to 15 minutes here. And by the way, density data is available sub-second. So we just have to choose some minimum here for what we're going to display. So this is the 15 minutes. And we're looking at occupancy. So this is how many people are in the building. Here's a table. So you can see right here for the Albuquerque headquarters, the capacity is 1,000. Peak occupancy for this time period was 878. And on average for working hours, the occupancy was 245. So what I see is Albuquerque headquarters is obviously quite a bit, has quite a bit more people than these other buildings. So I might be interested in, rather than looking at occupancy, looking at utilization. So this is how many people are in the space against how many people the space is built for. So if I change it to utilization now I can see something interesting. So the Albuquerque headquarters, while it had the most people, it's not the one that's basically right up against the threshold here in terms of utilization. It's actually North Market Street that's the busiest. And then this building right here, Hanover Square, is consistently hitting 154, 159% of utilization, and it's at a very odd time. So, depending on why this building is having this influx of employees during this time and what's going on, this is the kind of information that you can use to try to figure out how and what buildings you might be wanting to send employees to keep socially distancing working for you. I do want to show you also some other spaces that are available. So one conversation that's coming up quite a bit, has to do with workstations. How to effectively socially distance at workstations. What we can do here is, using density, you can cordon off sections of desks or entire floors and then get a really good sense of the utilization of those desks. So, if the marketing neighborhood has 100 people in it and there are 300 desks there, you're running at about 33% occupancy. So I'm going to go ahead and compare these desk neighborhoods. I'm going to switch this back to the 15 minutes again. And let's look at utilization, because each one of these teams is being utilized a little bit differently. So this is a really quick way to see, all right, right away, what I see here is the engineering neighborhood isn't anywhere near as utilized as the finance and engineering neighborhood, and also the marketing neighborhood. As you adjust your policies and figure out which teams are going to be coming back when, this is the kind of information that you can use to make sure that you're spreading people out effectively across the workplace. Also, a lot of people we're talking to are trying to understand or make sense of, okay, we have these assigned seats in this new COVID-19 area. How much does the assigned seating make sense versus more of a agile seating situation where we're going to be able to more effectively socially distance our workforce? And if we do that, what are the implications in terms of cleaning those places? And this is data you could use to both, as you experiment with that mix of unassigned and assigned seats, you're going to be able to make some adjustments in your policies there. I do want to show you one other thing about density that you may not know, but because we are threshold based and we are so accurate with the count of people coming through a door, we would know when 2 people come through a door, but only 1 person swipes a badge. And the way, for access controlled doors, and the way that we know that is through our native integrations with Secure 9000, Linnell S2, Vigilon, Genetec, Brevo, OpenPath, a number of other partners. So this is real-time tailgating detection. We've seen a real uptick in interest around tailgating detection as security teams try to enforce policies to not allow anybody into the building that shouldn't be there, or have very rigorous sort of testing and temperature taking procedures, or whatever they're putting into place at the entryways. It doesn't make sense to have those procedures if you're being pretty loosey-goosey about your policies around access control. So here you can see in the access control dashboard, this is historical data. So you're looking at literally here 5 different entrances. You see the total number of entrances on the right, and then incidents, which is the number of tailgating events. So in the north stairwell here, this is a pretty quiet space. I think this is an empty office at this stage, but this is April 5th through April 11th. We've got 2 entrances, and both of them were tailgating. So that's 100% tailgating rate. If I wanted to click in here, I could see exactly what day that happened. And then other areas like the main entry here, for example, we had 32 entrances and only 8 tailgating instances. This historical data could be super valuable. I had one customer install just a single unit at their primary entrance where they assured me up and down that they had a guard stationed and then also a very strict 1 person, 1 badge swipe policy. And within about 2 days, they called me and said, there must be something wrong with the system. Your system says that 25% of the people coming through the door aren't badging. And I said, there's probably nothing wrong with the system. Go down there and watch for 15 minutes and tell me what you see. And they went down there and they came back and they said, I saw a guard that was basically just like waving in employees that he knew. And I saw, people basically holding the door open for each other. And then about a day later, I saw that rate drop to about 4%. It went from 25% tailgaters to 4% tailgaters. And then I contacted them and I said, something must be broken. What changed? And they said, no, all we did is we took a picture of your dashboard and we sent it out to everybody at the company and said, here's our policy. We need to be enforcing this. And the problem solved itself almost immediately. So that's the way that historical data can really be used to know what the problem is and then effectively communicate it to employees. There's also ways to use our data for tailgating in real time. Sound an alarm at the door, send somebody a text message. We have some customers that are capturing video in real time of a tailgating event and putting it front and center in their GSOC. So there's some devils in the details around those real-time notifications. But if you have any interest in that, we're happy to talk through some of them. So that's the introduction to density and some of the ways that we're being used during this difficult time. Would love to open it up for questions right now and broaden the discussion.
Thanks, Jeff. A lot of great information. I have a list of questions that some of the folks were asking, and I'll just jump into some of these. I noticed just from a regular installation perspective, I noticed there's a sensor. It's just a Cat6 cable segment. Can you expand on how you roll that out? And is there a roadmap to have a wireless device? Jeff, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's me or.
Now I'm back up.
Yep,
right.
Back up.
Great question. So in our pursuit of near perfect accuracy and then also real-time data, it's literally impossible to achieve that with a battery-powered device. So there are some battery-powered devices, wireless devices that, might sample data every 5 minutes, but they wouldn't achieve what we're trying to do. So the device is powered PoE+, so it's via that Cat5, Cat6 cable. And just like a camera would be powered, and then the device also needs access to internet. That's either via that network cable, or each device is Wi-Fi enabled, so you can access the internet that way.
Great. There's also a question that comes up about using this technology potentially versus a camera technology for people counting. Comes up quite a bit. Maybe you could explain the differences. I know you have the infrared technology, but maybe you could expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely happy to. There are a variety of camera-based people counting solutions, and some of them are kind of nice because they can just sit on top of your existing camera system. It's sort of a software layer that exists on your existing infrastructure. But the trade-offs with those systems is that cameras are two-dimensional, and there's a lot of magic that you can do with object recognition and AI and things like this, but it ends up being not as accurate as we would like. And so again, in our pursuit of near perfect accuracy in terms of people count, we spent 3 years in research and development and actually built prototypes of pretty much everything that's out there for people counting. I mean, everything from as basic as a brake beam sensor to camera-based technologies, video-based technologies, stereoscopic cameras, thermal cameras, and basically came to the conclusion that the most accurate real-time approach, and then also anonymous, by the way, and so anonymity is very important to us with the device as well, really is this depth data approach that we've taken. So.
Good feedback. I think you had part of your demo on one of the dashboards that you displayed an alert that people can get, and I know you touched on it, but can you expand further what type of alerts people can get in real time? I know you mentioned text. I think you mentioned audible alerts, but can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So in the dashboard, and I should have showed it to you, there's a basic functionality for any space. You can define a total number of people and have density text message at any numbers that you define there when you've hit that capacity threshold. So we have companies like, Delta Airlines uses us in this way in their sky lounges. So when their planes have been grounded, sky lounges get super busy, they would get a text message that would say, okay, send in some more staff. Marriott hotels would do the same with their VIP lounges. So there's a lot of sort of hospitality use cases there. What we found with these alerts is that depending on what you're trying to do, it can get, text messages are nice for some use cases, but we have customers that use density, for example, across 100 bathrooms and want to understand, this one's used 10 times as frequently, send me an alert when I've hit, 1,000 visits to the bathroom so we can send in cleaning staff. that kind of thing is definitely possible through density with an integration and some development.
Great. Here's a question from one of our customers. You were talking about the 3,500 square foot per person, and they asked, it seems way too conservative. The typical office design would be 140 square feet per person. If social distancing is 6 foot spacing between people, wouldn't a 12 by 12 area for each employee provide adequate spacing of employee in a space?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. You know, honestly, we don't know the answer to this, and I'm not sure if there's any consensus on what this answer should be. And it could be that 12 by 12 in certain circumstances would work great. I guess the thing that I'd start to wonder about is if you want to get people into a space where they're as dense as 12 by 12, it's probably not the space that you're going to be worried about as much as the entries into that space. So really, I think because there's so much that's unknown and because policies are going to be changing about this constantly, and it's just literally going to be seeing what works and experimenting and changing over time, having the data about actually what is happening in the workplace is going to be critical. And that's where hopefully density can provide value, and you can see what the density of the space is as you adjust policies.
You know, you've worked with a lot of the real estate professionals, the Cushmans, the CBREs. Have you had some initial discussions with them, or recent discussions with them about what they're doing as best practices, especially with occupancy and monitoring the density of the people in the workspace?
Yeah, we have, you know, I think from our standpoint, you know, it's really the tenants, the occupiers that are probably the most interested in managing a safe and healthy workplace. So I think it's going to be up to the tenants and the occupiers really to think about what kinds of policies they want to put in place, how they're going to be managing that, and then the kinds of technologies that might be able to assist them.
Okay, great. Couple more questions. Does density have AD integration? Can alerts be done via Active Directory groups?
Active Directory, I'm not sure. Again, we'd have to get into the devils and the details here.
Sure.
If you give me some more information about what you're trying to achieve, we could talk about what that might look like. So we have this great API. We also have these webhooks. With any system like that, you know, there's no native integration with Active Directory to do those types of alerts. There would probably be some piece of software that would sit in between, and we can sort of assist with thinking about how that might work.
Had a couple questions around pricing, and Jeff, you may want to answer that, but I know there's different pricing models depending on everything from volume, and I know the technology can be put in a subscription model. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think in terms of pricing, you know, DataVox is going to be your partner to talk with them about scoping a project. You know, we partner closely with DataVox in these types of projects. One of the first things that we do is we try to scope the project based off of the number of sensors that's going to be required, because you know the pricing is directly related to how many sensors are going to be deployed. So we need to understand what are the highest value spaces that you want to be measuring, and then how many sensors are going to be required to accomplish that.
Good information. I guess, how's lead times been? I know people are trying to ramp up pretty quick, easy to deploy. You know, we use it at our office. Can you talk about that?
In terms of ease of deployment?
Well, not only that, but more around logistics, lead times, shipping. Is there a backlog? You know, you place an order today, how soon can we get it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you might all be pleased to know that Density made a decision quite a while ago to do all of our manufacturing here in the United States, which actually has been a great advantage for us during, you know, periods of disruptions in shipping and everything else. There's no backlog in terms of inventory or devices to send. And then also typically within the United States, from the time that we have an order to the time that you have the devices could be as little as 7 days. I would say, there is an installation requirement. Cable has to be pulled. Devices need to be, hung from the walls and ceilings. And DataVox is a great partner in terms of assisting with that. And we could have a project done from contract signed. We've seen it happen as and up and running. We've seen it happen as quickly as 2 weeks.
Oh, it's good news. Jeff, I think that's all the questions the team has. Great information. And for those of you that had a chance to visit with us during today's session, we'd love to be a resource however it makes sense. And, the whole DataVox team can support your efforts in a rollout or another conversation around this and other solutions. So, Jeff, thanks for helping us and supporting our efforts with this. Jessica, I'll turn it over back to you.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you all for joining today's webinar. As a reminder, the recording link for today's session will be emailed to all attendees 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you did enjoy today's session and would like to hear more, we do offer new webinars weekly. Please check our DataVox website for more information on upcoming sessions. And as always, we would love to hear your feedback on our events. Once this webinar has ended, you will be redirected to a survey page. If you could please take a moment to complete the survey before closing out your browser, we would greatly appreciate it. That concludes our session for today. Thank you again to Jeff for a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.